Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for your patience. We got to get up and running here. So thanks so much for joining me today, Lorne.
Thanks for having me, Brittany.
So welcome to Eye Openers. If you are new here, we are opening our eyes with caffeine and also with insightful stories and tales of your experience in entrepreneurship, in finance, and philanthropy, so that those of us who are in the middle of this or feeling lonely or feeling like we can't, we're going to hear about different situations that maybe felt impossible to get through in certain days, but yet here you are. So thanks again for joining us. I'm going to give you a proper introduction. So Lorne, you've done quite a bit in your time. I mean, you've had some opportunities in estate planning, corporate applications. You've worked with entrepreneurs, businesses across the country. You were an executive, worked in technology and environmental sectors. Let me know if I'm missing anything here. I've got a longer list as I go. Founded KindMark, was a leader in the creation of software and technologies to advance philanthropy. You have founded Global Fellows in Courage. I really want to talk about that today, as that's your new venture. Super exciting for those of us who are in Rhode Island to learn more about. And I learned of you from your work at SEG, which is Social Enterprise Greenhouse, a real hub for entrepreneurs looking to connect with resources and wisdom to help their venture. And also, interesting, you have been a candidate for the mayor of Providence. Did I miss anything major? No, okay. I'm sure it could go on and on.
Well, I have major ADD.
Major ADD, yeah. Lots of interesting places to go and ways to spend your time. So I like to start off with a big question, okay? So bear with me here. What is your vision for the future as it pertains to the industries you spend your time in?
Well, I spend most of my time in community and philanthropy. And so, the vision or the hope I have is that I continue to learn, I can continue to contribute in meaningful ways, I can continue to contribute more, I can inspire and assist others to find their own place, to find their own passions and inspirations, and then help them achieve, what they can contribute.
Mm-hmm.
I really do think it's up to each of us to find something we care about and find the best ways to contribute in ways that give us joy.
So I feel like you have had that mindset, that perspective about how important doing that work is for a while. I mean, you can see it in your bio that you've been doing this kind of volunteer work or philanthropic work. When was it something that you always had in you, that you knew it was important to support others like along this way, or was there something that happened that made you realize, like in a more acute sense?
Well, for starters, I'm one of 8 kids. Okay, so when you're one of 8 kids, you learn several things. One is, you've got to stand up for yourself and to get something to eat. And 2 is you learn that you got to work together and you got to find the best in the people around you and celebrate those things and help each other. My parents had their hands full with 8 kids, but they still found ways to volunteer in the community. My dad was our scoutmaster. My mom was a Meals on Wheels volunteer. So we all were surrounded by that very, very, at a very young age. And then it just went from there. Boy Scouts and many, many years in Boy Scouts and learning that, we have a responsibility to try to find something good to do for somebody else every day. So, that sort of stuff. I didn't, there was no hope for me not having this mindset. I was surrounded by it, and I'm very, very grateful for it.
Oh, sorry there for a second. So So you learned it in your house, right? It was clearly a value of your family's that was there. Now, do you feel like that would be different if you weren't in such a large family?
Well, I'm sure it would be different. Yeah, I mean, in any of our lives, any small thing, you know, in the long run, would change our lives dramatically. Certainly, growing up in a different family, and I had a different experience. But you put all these things together: your family, your friends, what you're surrounded by, what you gaze upon, and my in one of my books. Handwritten thoughts from leaders around the world. George Harrison of the Beatles wrote, man becomes that which he gazes upon, which he took from ancient, Eastern thought. But I think it's true. We become what we're surrounded by.
Sorry, Lauren. Everyone in the chat of the event is asking me for like information on how to like be right here with us live. So I just had to get that to them for a second. So we are going to be able to, in the post-production, edit this part out. But it's more important that everybody gets to hear your story. Now, I want to, I asked this question about opportunity because I think that it is important for us to reframe. A lot of the work I do is about reframing. So people come to me and feel like, I can't see how to change the model of my business. I can't seem to get my team to work in the way that I need to. But what I think is a lot of people fail to see what the greatest opportunity is right in front of them. So in regards to the things you're spending your time in right now, which is the Global Fellows in Courage, and maybe you want to share some of the other things you have going on for you right now. But what is the greatest opportunity that you see in those spaces in front of you right now?
Well, I think I generally see the greatest opportunity within myself, and bringing a better and better person, and bringing a better and better perspective to everything that I do. Continuing to keep my attitude in check, continuing to think about how I can be better, be a better person, because we all fail, and you gave a long list of things that I've been involved in at the top of this discussion. And I was thinking as you were talking about them, okay, that failed, that failed, that failed, that one worked, that failed, that failed, that failed. And so what that suggests is that, there's real value, adventure, and excitement in being open to just trying things and realizing that they may fail, but you learn something and you get better the next time.
Right. It's such an important point. I had a guest on the other day who he said, Keno Mollings, maybe you know him. He spoke that it was his third go at entrepreneurship, and he's praying that third time's a charm. But there's not a lot of places where we can talk about the failings that have happened in order to get to where we are today. And I want this conversation to really be part of that. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. Is there a specific one that you could maybe elaborate on a little bit that, I really thought this was like an ace in the hole, and then as we worked on it, it just clearly wasn't?
Well, I'll give you two, and they're both in the technology space. In 1999, I had this idea of I'm sorry, in 1985, when I got out of Harvard Business School, I had this idea of building an online platform for buying and selling stuff. But it was 1985.
Yeah.
People couldn't spell online, never mind what to do. So when I put my ads up, go online and look for something to buy, put up something to sell, people are like, what are you talking about? And so it was eBay. It was too early. You
were ahead of your time.
3 or 4 years early, but I learned a lot, and spent time and money and learned about financing. I brought friends into this thing. They invested in me, invested in the idea, and I think one of the reasons I worked so hard at trying to make it go and trying to get the market to catch up with this online thing in 1985 was that I didn't want to fail my friends. I didn't want to fail the people that believed in me. The second one was in 1999. I started this software company, Kindmark, and it was based on the idea that that employee giving programs, that is like United Way programs around the country and around the world, could be done much more efficiently, because United Ways at the time were charging 15, 18% on the dollar to collect a dollar and give it away. We built a platform. I built a team in India and in San Francisco, and we built a platform that could do that job for 3%. And we had all these major companies, Dell and General Motors and Schwab and EDS and all these companies as clients. And we got up and running, and boom, the dot-com bubble burst. We went from having a ridiculously high valuation to being worth zero. And I learned a lot from that too. And so the company itself failed. But what I hang on to is the fact that the platform we developed, the whole world ended up using, and doing philanthropy much more efficiently, getting more and more resources to the needs in all of our communities. So, I hang on to what are the good things that happen? What are the things that I learned from the failure?
Right. And making impact along the way. If you had companies like that on board, I'm certain that you guys were doing great work. And so tell us where that brings you today with Global Fellows Encourage and how you're bringing what you've learned into that.
Yeah, so the idea in Global Fellows Encourage was, I founded Social Enterprise Greenhouse 20 years ago. And that is a stone soup story. That stone soup story where so many people come to the center of the town and they throw something in the big pot, and before you know it, you have really, really good soup. Mm-hmm. That's the Social Enterprise Greenhouse story, where many, many really generous people have come along and helped each other and thrown something good into the mix, and now we have this extraordinary organization that is coaching and providing technical support and so on to hundreds of entrepreneurs that based here in Rhode Island and creating jobs in Rhode Island, but are serving the world, which is really pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I wanted to take that to the next level and think about. So the Global Fellows Encourage is an idea that essentially is taking people all over the world who are extraordinarily courageous in pursuing the advancement of human rights. It might be in human trafficking. It might be in journalism. It might be in, promoting democracy. It might be any number of things. But so the idea is identifying those people, identifying what they need in terms of resources and in terms of skills to accelerate their mission and their work, bring them here and give them that, and build a network of alumni from this program, build more and more connectedness and social capital that helps all of these people sort of change the trajectory of their effectiveness and their contribution to their community and to the world at large.
Awesome. Ben asked a question there. I don't know if you can see it, but how did you learn to hang on to the right things when you failed? Right. So, you shared with us your nuggets of wisdom that came from that. But, how do you learn to hang on to, I guess what he's saying is what worked or the failings?
I think it's a process of, we have to have a personal process of reflection. Right. So, and that's a deliberate thing. We have to pause in everything we do, in a relationship with one of our children, in a relationship with a friend, in a relationship with a spouse, in the work we do in the community, in everything in our lives. We have to take time to reflect on, what worked, what didn't work, and why, and what did I learn from the success? What did I learn from the failure? How might I remind myself of those things in the next go around? I mean, I'm the parent of 4 kids, and I got to tell you, it's the most challenging job I've ever done. And every day I feel insecure, and I feel that I'm not as good as I need to be, or as I could be as a parent, right? And I often feel the same way in my relationships with friends and the community. I've failed many times, and I've failed, not only in businesses, but failed, people in my life. And none of us like to do that, but we all do it. So then the point is, okay, what do we do with that? We take the time to reflect on that. We take the time to understand better, understand ourselves better, and try to understand, why am I triggered by this, and this, and why do I have these reactions? And getting better at those things and understanding ourselves better is an opportunity that lasts a lifetime. We never get perfect. There's no such thing as that. It's always, 9 steps forward, 8 steps back. But the good news is we net 1, and if you keep adding that net 1, every day, before you know it, you're pretty darn good.
Yeah. I love that. You're pretty darn good. This is really resonating with people. And so Rich asks, how did you build the resilience in behaviors or habits to try again? So it's basically what you're just talking about a bit here. How do you, what does your actual practice look like that involves this self-reflection and building that awareness?
Yeah, good question. So, every year I do my New Year's resolutions and my New Year's goals and and they show up on my iPhone, on my calendar, every Monday morning as the first thing on Monday morning. And it's in your mind, body, spirit, all of the things that I want to work on in the important relationships in my life. So it's present right in front of me, and I have to look at it. And I one of my goals is to be up every morning early, doing some stretching. I used to do lots and lots of hard work, but I'm 67 years old, and stretching and walking up hills is about as much as I can do these days. 2 years ago, I rode my bicycle from Seattle to Providence unsupported. So, yeah. And
that should be in the bio.
Yeah, but anyway, my point there is I'm every morning just doing a little meditation, a little centering, trying to think about, what have I got to do today? How do I do that well? And there I go, I've forgotten the question.
No, it's good. But he's asking, how do you build that resilience in those behaviors and habits that allow you to keep trying again?
So it is that kind of process. It's that kind of, once again, it's this reflection, and it's some meditation, it's some thinking about, what happened yesterday and what am I going to try to do today? And let's be honest. I mean, we all fail even at that, I didn't do my stretching and I didn't do my meditation today because I got up early to work on this little bench I'm making for my grandson, and I have to have it finished today.
Yeah. So I think you bring up a really great point, because we're constantly buying books and looking for articles or whatever can provide an answer that's going to allow us to show up 100%. Oh, Rich uses the 5-minute journal. So do I. I absolutely love that thing. Have you seen this, Lauren, the 5-minute journal? Oh, geez. It's like it makes it easier to sit down and have a reflection process every day. But I see this all the time, where if people aren't able to nail it 100%, they feel like it's a failure, where I try to get people to adopt Pareto's principle or 80-20 rule, where if you set the intention and you're able to find yourself sitting down and doing that 80% of the time, I mean, that's growth. That's serious growth. Like you said, the net one is what we're looking for here, progress over perfection. And so there's a mindset shift that needs to happen around just being in pursuit of progress, making the space for it to fail or to push yourself outside of your comfort zones, kind of watch what happens.
I mean, one thing we each can do is pretend we're 11 months old, okay? And we're trying to learn how to walk. We have this vision of, hey, I want to do what mom and dad are doing. Look at them on 2 feet, okay? How many times does that darn kid get up and fall on his face? And he keeps getting up and trying and trying and trying. And before you know it, he ends up walking. We all end up walking, right?
Right. It's such a good point. I mean, I have little kids at home, so I love this example. It's so true. And I think about how much praise I give my kids for things that might seem ordinary. But when do we lose that? Like, we lose that somewhere where we stop feeling proud of ourselves for those accomplishments. Like, my 5-year-old runs home and she's like, did you know I am so fast and I'm so good at this and I'm so good at this? And I'm like, gosh, that's awesome. Why am I not walking around doing that? I mean, people would have a lot to say about me if I did, but when did that start? Like, why is it not okay to say, like, hey, I've worked really hard to like gain these skills and I'm actually really good at this thing. Mm-hmm. And hopefully maybe, Global Fellows and Courage can be a place where people can come together and recognize those strengths and create a community around making that be okay. Yep. Ben has another great question for you around getting started, right? I think this is a place where a lot of people feel stuck. And this is where SEG, Social Enterprise Greenhouse, that Lorne was talking about, is a really great place to help people overcome those obstacles. But he asks, what resources did you have to get started in your ventures? How did you start?
Well, it was mostly about relationships. It was relationships that I had tended to, that I had nurtured for, in some cases, decades. Mm-hmm. And so I had let's say the relationship capital to go to a person and say, hey, I'm trying to do this. I need your help. Would you come along with me on this? And maybe it's about asking them for their skill and perspective, or maybe it's about asking for financial support. It could be any number of things, but think of the people who might have an interest in what it is we're trying to do, in terms of being consistent with their values and interests and so on, but also about the people who know us and want to see us succeed. I'm in a place in my life where most of my time is just trying to help other people succeed at their stuff. And there's many people out there that want to do that, but we need to ask for it.
Yeah, I think there's a way of asking for it, though, that I don't know how much time you spend on LinkedIn, but I could go on at any minute and my inbox is going to be full of these kind of sideways requests where I think people are asking for something before they give to that relationship. Yeah. So, even especially with these changes that COVID has brought upon us, I don't know what your COVID experience has been like, but everybody has a COVID story. And I think it's really going to shift the way that we form relationships and maintain them. Just by limiting access, number one, so much of language is not verbal. And so there's challenges there in building that trust, right? But I think that this is like an art to some degree that some people are missing that nuance of needing to give and contribute to a relationship first.
I totally agree. You're absolutely right, Brittany. I mean, it's really all about relationships, right? There's so much that we can do as individuals, but there's so much more that we can do if we're doing it with others and with the support of others. And that, as you say, depends on our nurturing those relationships and nurturing those connections, and doing that not because we're going to get something back, not a conditional thing, but because we're starting with generosity. We're starting with, kindness. We're starting with really caring about someone else.
Mm-hmm. I say to people who work with me, I say, think about someone who comes through your door. No one's coming through any doors right now, but think of them as being a client, like guaranteed 3 years from now. And how would you manage that conversation when they're approaching you for the first time? If you knew that, no, without a doubt, 3 years from now, they'll be a client, not today, not tomorrow, but in 3 years. And it changes the way people would approach that conversation. And I find that people are willing to be a lot more of service and be giving, because there is a part of that is in our nature, that's inherent in us, because we're social beings, and we understand in a very primal level that we do need to contribute in some fashion. But we want that security first. And so I frame this question for people, like, how would you approach someone upon a first interaction if you had that guaranteed, but it would be several years down the road? And I find that people do become more generous in nature when they have that.
Yeah, I think that's a helpful perspective. I think it's also helpful. Yeah, my mom and dad always said, if you can't say something nice, don't say something at all. I mean, the fundamental principle there is seeing something good in everybody. We may disagree with someone. We may vehemently disagree, or not even share values with someone, but that doesn't mean we can't look for, find, and appreciate something good.
Good point. So everyone's favorite question of the podcast, which is, what kind of breakthroughs or insights have you had in the past that have changed the way that you showed up in business or in relationships or in your life? Like, was there a moment, or maybe a moment of adversity or challenge or failure, that really created a breakthrough that changed the way that you see things?
Well, I think it's really all about learning, growing. And for me, so I came across this book, I don't know, might be 40 years ago now, which I still read from time to time. And it's Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And the biggest thing that I took away from that book, that lesson, is that no matter what we're surrounded by, no matter the circumstances, no matter how hard they might be, we still get to choose our attitude. We still get to choose to be hopeful. We still get to choose how we show up, for ourselves, for others, for needs in the community. We still get to choose. And that's true our entire life. We get to choose our attitude every day, every moment. And, if we've been a real dirtbag, up till this point in our lives, guess what? We still get to choose who we're going to be in this next moment. We get to change. It's all about attitude.
Awesome. Yes, that book brings me to tears every time I read it. It's so powerful. The story it just really forces you to look at your own life and figure out, wow, how could I have shown up differently? If he managed to show up in the face of the ultimate challenges, I can certainly shift the way that I do. Ben has a great question for you. What achievements so far are you most proud of, and why? I'm going to add that part.
Oh boy. Well, I the things that most important to me are the relationships in my life, and because everything else that I've learned and everything else that has worked has been a consequence of the relationships in my life. So I think I'm most proud of that. That being said, I know that I have failed myself and I have failed others many, many times. So there's still work to be done to be, better at those relationships. But I don't know. I guess that's for me the greatest accomplishment.
Are there one or two relationships that you could speak of that you feel most proud?
Well, I feel really good, but challenged in my relationships with my kids. They force me to think about how I can be better.
Mm.
So I'm proud of them. I'm proud of those relationships, and that they continue to teach me, and I continue to learn from them. Yeah, I think that's it.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I mean, what a great way to highlight really what is truly most important in our lives. The family, whether it's blood or chosen family, and investing in those relationships, and really how powerful it is. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the Harvard Men's study, that longitudinal study, right? And that those who had the strongest relationships had the highest reported levels of happiness, quality of life, and ultimately years in their life. And so that really tells us something.
One of the things that I share with my kids is that I think it's important to be surrounded by a lot of support in your life. If you build a table, with 16 legs and you break a leg, so what? You're still going to be standing. If you build a table with 3 legs and you break a leg, the whole damn thing falls down. And so I think there's some wisdom somewhere in that. Pay attention to, building legs in our lives in lots of different ways that will keep our spirit and our faith and our hope and our attitude together.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that answer. Last question from the community here. How do you balance personal and family life with accomplishments professionally?
Yeah, it's always a struggle because I think, as I mentioned at the top of the discussion, I have ADD, and 1 minute I'm writing books, the next minute I'm trying to do Global Fellows, the next minute I've been climbing the 7 summits, the highest mountain in each continent, riding a bike across the country, and so I think of life as a portfolio, and I think of, once again, it goes back to all these legs on the table. It's about having lots of things in my life that inspire me and challenge me, but that inherently, produces a struggle of how do I pay enough attention to this, and this, to have them go well, and relationships come first. How do I pay attention to this relationship in a way that it'll get better and it'll be nourishing for both of us.
Great point. Great answer. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And thank you to everyone who has joined us and asked some really powerful questions. It was so great to hear from you and just your breadth of experience, but really it ultimately comes down to the things we all know are most important, but maybe in a day-to-day fail to recognize it, or to maybe create a schedule or a balance that reflects that.
So you made a point that the most important things we already know. We just have to keep reminding ourselves of those things. And we have to have ways to remind ourselves of those things that we already know.
Mm-hmm.
One brief commercial. Tomorrow night, Global Fellows Encourage has its first event. It's a discussion about personal courage with Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State of Georgia, David Cicilline, our congressman, and Nellie Gorbea. I think it's going to be live streamed on Facebook. And anyway, join us.
If you get me the link, I will post it on this thread so that everybody who joined us today and was invited to this event can also see that and hear more from you, because that sounds like a really powerful conversation.
I wish I could see everybody, but thank you very, very much for allowing me to be with you today.
Yes. Okay. You stay on with me for a second and I'm going to end the broadcast. Thanks again, everyone, and see you next week on Eye Opener.